In this video, we're breaking down 2 hours of Family Guy mysteries and unsolved lore. So settle in, get comfortable, and let's get into it. Family Guy has been on the air since 1999, 25 years, and in that time, buried inside thousands of cutaway gags, throwaway jokes, and one-liners that most people forget by the next commercial break, the show has quietly built something nobody expected. A mythology. Not in a planned Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of way, more like the way old houses develop cracks that form patterns if you stare at them long enough. The writers kept adding details, they kept referencing old episodes, they kept dropping facts about these characters that, when you line them all up next to each other, start to tell stories the show never intended to tell out loud. And once you see those stories, you can't unsee them. So that's what we're doing tonight. No rushing, no skipping, just settling in and letting the mysteries unfold one at a time, starting with the family that secretly runs everything in Quahog. Get comfortable. This is going to take a while. And that's the whole point. We need to talk about the Pewterschmidts, not the jokes about them. Not the cutaway gags where Carter acts like a rich jerk and the audience laughs because rich people being awful is inherently funny. We need to talk about the actual canonical facts. Because the Pewterschmidt fortune isn't just old money, it's founding father money with a paper trail that goes back to before America was even a country. Canonically, the family were among the first to colonize America from England, settling in Newport, Rhode Island, where their primary estate sits on oceanfront property with the kind of architectural grandeur that you only see in families who've had centuries to accumulate wealth. This isn't new tech money. This isn't a lucky stock pick. This is generational control that predates the American experiment itself. And at the center of it all is Carter Pewterschmidt, Lois's father, a man who doesn't just own businesses, he owns the kinds of businesses that form the skeleton of American infrastructure. Pewterschmidt Industries is described in the show as a $6 billion empire with tentacles stretching into shipping, pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, telecommunications, aerospace, and biotech. That's not diversification for profit margins, that's systems-level control. Carter doesn't need to run for office. He doesn't need to lobby politicians. He is the infrastructure that politicians depend on. And the show keeps proving this over and over again. In the episode T. Peter, Carter orchestrates the complete collapse of Quahog's municipal government. Not through force, not through bribery, at least not directly. He manufactures a fake grassroots political movement, astroturfs the entire thing, and uses it to shut down the town's government so that Pewterschmidt Industries can dump chemical waste without environmental oversight. Think about what that actually means. A private citizen engineered the collapse of local democracy through manufactured public outrage. And it worked. Mayor Adam West folded within days. Basic services vanished. The town descended into chaos. But Carter got exactly what he wanted. And when Peter eventually exposed the pollution scheme and the government reformed, Carter faced absolutely zero legal consequences. No investigation, no charges, nothing. That's not cartoon logic protecting him. That's wealth protecting him. The kind of wealth that makes problems disappear the way old money has always made problems disappear, quietly and completely. Barbara Pewterschmidt adds another layer entirely. The show reveals, almost as a throwaway detail, that Barbara's maiden name was Hebrewberg and that she's a Holocaust survivor who concealed her Jewish identity when she married Carter. The reason is stated plainly in the episode. Carter needed access to elite country clubs that barred Jews, and both characters agree this was the right thing to do. A line so casually monstrous it almost gets lost in the pacing of the scene. But what that detail tells us is significant. The Pewterschmidts operate in circles where old-world European prejudices still dictate access to power, and they're willing to commit identity erasure to maintain that access. Barbara didn't just marry into wealth, she adapted to its rules and helped perpetuate its social architecture. And then there's the slavery connection. This one is confirmed canon, revealed in the season 3 episode Peter Griffin, husband, father, brother. Peter goes to the Quahog Public Library to research his family genealogy and discovers that his ancestor, Nate Griffin, was a slave owned by the Pewterschmidt family. Carter's own family history book confirms it. The Pewterschmidts literally owned the Griffin bloodline for generations. They exercised legal, economic, and physical control over Peter's family. And that power dynamic, the show argues through its own internal logic, never truly dissolved. It just evolved. Carter still treats Peter like property. He offered Peter $1 million not to marry Lois in the episode Death Lives. He forces Peter to perform degrading acts in exchange for basic assistance. He openly despises Peter and makes no effort to hide it. But once the marriage happened, Carter didn't disown Lois. He invested in her. He made sure his grandchildren would be raised under his financial umbrella, where his influence could shape them despite Peter's presence. Because the show confirms in the episode Throw It Away that Carter and Barbara pay for the Griffin house. Peter doesn't own 31 Spooner Street. The Pewterschmidts do. Every mortgage payment, every property tax bill, every structural repair is subsidized by Carter's empire. So Lois didn't rebel against her family's wealth by marrying a working-class brewery employee. She extended her family's control over another generation by ensuring her children would be raised in Pewterschmidt-owned real estate, dependent on Pewterschmidt money, forever tethered to the dynasty regardless of Peter's blue-collar aesthetic. And this is where the pattern starts to become undeniable. Peter Griffin has committed crimes that would result in multiple life sentences if prosecuted, even by cartoon standards. He's destroyed buildings. He's caused countless injuries. He's committed acts that, in any functioning legal system, would put him away permanently. But consequences evaporate. Sentences get reduced to nothing. Evidence disappears. And the one time Peter commits crimes outside of Quahog, outside of Pewterschmidt territory, in the episode Cool Hand Peter, a corrupt sheriff plants drugs on him and imprisons him in a county work camp, extending his sentence indefinitely. The system tries to crush him. But in Quahog, where the Pewterschmidts hold influence, Peter walks free every single time. Carter's willingness to corrupt law enforcement is established in the show itself. He bribes police officers to falsely accuse Brian of crimes. He views police as employees. He has enough money to fund the systems that pay their salaries, buy their equipment, and maintain their pensions. When he wanted to shut down Quahog's government in T. Peter, he didn't need to bribe individual officials. He just manufactured public outrage and let democracy eat itself. And then there's the cancer cure. In the episode The Old Man and the Big C, Brian and Stewie discover that Pewterschmidt Industries has developed a cure for cancer. A full cure. And Carter refuses to release it publicly because treating cancer is more profitable than curing it. When Lois confronts him about it, he promises to release the cure just for her. Then he doesn't follow through, and nothing happens. No investigation, no lawsuit, no regulatory action. He just gets away with it. The same episode reveals that Carter's industrial operations gave an entire town cancer through chemical waste dumping. He's not just profiting from illness. He's creating it, then monopolizing the treatment. You don't do that and walk away free unless you control the regulatory agencies that would investigate you, the media outlets that would expose you, and the courts that would prosecute you. And Carter demonstrably controls all three. The Griffins aren't protected by cartoon logic or sitcom conventions, where consequences reset between episodes. They're protected by proximity to a dynasty that has embedded itself into American power structures for over 2 centuries. A dynasty that owns the infrastructure this country was built on. That has controlled the Griffin bloodline since the slavery era. That can manipulate political movements, corrupt law enforcement, suppress cancer cures, and dissolve municipal governments without ever facing a single consequence. Every time Peter walks away from a crime scene without handcuffs, it's not because Family Guy is just a cartoon. It's because in Quahog, Rhode Island, the Pewterschmidts are the law. And Lois, by marrying Peter, didn't escape that world. She brought Peter into it, and he's too oblivious to realize he's not getting away with things through luck. He's getting away with things because his father-in-law owns the county. If you're enjoying this so far, the subscribe button is right there. But the Pewterschmidt dynasty's control over the Griffin bloodline goes deeper than money and political power. It goes all the way down to DNA, and that brings us to the most disturbing theory in Family Guy lore: Meg Griffin, the most abused character in the history of animated television, the one the family forgets exists, the one they tried to abandon at a fire station, considered aborting, and whose lunch consists of food scraps and a photograph of Lois eating chicken. The joke has always been that Meg is the family punching bag, that her suffering is just the show's longest running gag. But when you actually line up the canonical evidence the show has dropped over the years, her story stops being funny and starts being something else entirely, because Meg might not be Peter's biological daughter, and the show has said this out loud, on screen, in an actual episode. During a court scene in the Season 3 episode Screwed the Pooch, a character testifies that Meg's real father is someone named Stan Thompson. Now here's the important caveat: the show never revisits Stan Thompson. It never explains who he is. It never acknowledges the legal or emotional implications of this claim. Meg doesn't hear it because she's wearing headphones, which is a narratively convenient detail that lets this bombshell sit completely uncontested in the show's official record. Some fans have debated whether this line was actually spoken in the aired version of the episode, or whether it lives only in fan wiki lore, so we should flag it as disputed. But the fact that this claim has circulated for over 2 decades without the show ever definitively confirming or denying it tells you something about how Family Guy operates. It drops grenades and walks away. But whether Stan Thompson is real or not, the show provides mountains of other evidence that something is fundamentally wrong with Meg's origin story. And that evidence points in a direction that's far more calculated than a random affair. Start with the contradictions. Meg's birth story changes every time the show tells it. In one episode, she's born with her heart on top of her head, which is why she wears a hat. In A Fistful of Meg, Peter reveals that her birth certificate actually says Megatron, not Megan. In I Never Met the Dead Man, Peter mistakes her for a boy when she's born. The family considers abandoning her. They consider aborting her. These aren't continuity errors in the traditional sense. This is the show's internal reality, rejecting a memory that doesn't align with whatever the truth actually is. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. The show canonically establishes that Carter Pewterschmidt and Dr. Elmer Hartman have a deep professional relationship. Hartman is Carter's personal physician. Their identical voices are acknowledged in the episode Believe It or Not, Joe's Walking on Air, when Peter comments that they sound exactly the same, and Hartman explains it away with a joke about there only being so many voices in the world. But that joke functions as narrative cover for something deeper. When you're a billionaire industrialist who runs a pharmaceutical empire sophisticated enough to synthesize a cancer cure and then suppress it for profit, you don't hire a small-town general practitioner as your personal doctor, unless that doctor serves a very specific purpose. And Hartman possesses capabilities that go way beyond general practice. In New Kidney in Town, while discussing Peter's kidney transplant, Dr. Hartman casually mentions that while attempting to clone a chicken, he inadvertently created Ernie the giant chicken. This gets brushed off as a throwaway gag, but past what Hartman just admitted, he has access to cloning technology, he has genetic manipulation capabilities advanced enough to produce a viable organism, and he has the resources to conduct these experiments without any kind of institutional oversight. A small-town doctor doesn't have access to that kind of technology unless someone with deep pockets is bankrolling the research. Someone like Carter Pewterschmidt, whose pharmaceutical division already proved it can cure cancer. If Pewterschmidt Industries can cure cancer, they can manipulate genetic code. If Hartman can clone organisms, he can engineer offspring. The infrastructure exists in the show's established canon. So consider this timeline. Lois, young and rebellious, dates Peter, a working-class towel boy at the country club. Carter despises this relationship, as we already discussed, and does everything in his power to prevent the marriage. But Lois marries Peter anyway, which means any children they produce would be genetic dilutions of the Pewter-Schmidt bloodline, raised in a blue-collar household with zero understanding of how to manage dynastic wealth. That would be unacceptable to a man like Carter, who operates with generational foresight. Now look at the episode Don't Make Me Over from Season 4. This is confirmed in the show's canon, Episode 4 of the 4th season. Meg receives a makeover at the mall. Hair, makeup, contact lenses instead of glasses. And she transforms from universally rejected to so attractive that a record producer tries to sign her, and she ends up on live television. The show presents this as a superficial cosmetic change, but the transformation is so absolute, so total, that it can't be explained by lipstick and a blow dryer alone. Bone structure doesn't change with a makeover. Facial proportions don't realign. Yet Meg goes from someone the entire world ignores to someone the entire world desires, all because Trisha Takanawa gave her a free makeover at the mall. And at the end of the episode, she reverts. She says being beautiful is too much work and goes back to her normal appearance. If this were a simple cosmetic transformation, going back would be as easy as washing your face. But the show treats it like she's actively suppressing something, like maintaining that appearance requires effort that goes beyond vanity. The theory that ties all of this together is that Meg was designed to be invisible, that her baseline appearance, the glasses, the hat, the frumpy clothes, the hunched posture, isn't her natural state, that it's a deliberately engineered default meant to ensure she doesn't attract attention. And the makeover, in Don't Make Me Over, wasn't cosmetic intervention at all. It was a catalyst that activated genetic potential that had been dormant. This also explains the family's treatment of her. On some unconscious level, they know she's not fully theirs. Peter admits he thought Meg was a house cat for 4 years. Lois provides Meg with garbage for school lunch. They've tried to abandon her, sell her, abort her. This isn't comedic exaggeration of bad parenting. It's the behavior of people who are responding to a biological truth their conscious minds can't access. Studies on step families show that non-biological parents invest less emotionally and financially in stepchildren, even when they consciously believe they're bonded. Peter and Lois's cruelty toward Meg reads as pathological until you consider the possibility that their parental instincts never fully activated because the genetic recognition signals were absent. Meg might not be their daughter in the way they think she is. She might be something else entirely, an experiment, a carefully designed heir created to inherit a dynasty while appearing too average to attract attention. And the hat. Meg wears a hat constantly. One explanation given in the show is that she was born with her heart on top of her head. Symbolically, that's almost too perfect. A heart exposed outside the body, vulnerable, visible, unprotected. Meg's capacity for love, her ability to feel and connect, was engineered to be external, unsheltered. Carter, if he commissioned this experiment, wanted an heir who would endure abuse without breaking, who would remain loyal despite neglect, who would operate from a place of desperate gratitude when finally acknowledged. But he didn't account for the psychological toll of engineering someone to be unloved. Meg's heart, exposed and covered by a hat, represents the contradiction at her core. She was made to be invisible, but she can't stop feeling. Remember, the Pewter-Schmidts own the Griffin house. We covered that earlier. That isn't generosity. If this theory holds, it's monitoring. Carter needs Meg raised in a controlled environment where he can observe her development and intervene if complications arise. Dr. Hartman, as the family physician, provides regular checkups that function as data collection. Every visit, every exam is another data point in a long-term experiment. Whether you believe the full genetic engineering angle or not, the canonical facts are all there. Meg's disputed parentage, Dr. Hartman's confirmed genetic experimentation capabilities and his relationship with Carter, the Pewter-Schmidt pharmaceutical empire, the radical physical transformation in Don't Make Me Over, the contradictory birth stories, the family's biological rejection of Meg, and Carter's established willingness to manipulate information, suppress cures, and shut down governments for profit and legacy preservation. Something is wrong with Meg's origin story. The show knows it, and it keeps telling us piece by piece, episode by episode, without ever saying the quiet part loud enough for casual viewers to hear. But Meg isn't the only Griffin family member whose biology doesn't add up, because if you look closely at Brian, the family dog, his relationship with death is far stranger than anyone has noticed. Brian Griffin has died multiple times. Not in cutaway gags, not in dream sequences, not in hypothetical scenarios that get erased by the end of the episode. Brian has died in actual, canonical, plot-driven deaths, where his body stops functioning, and the other characters grieve him and bury him, and move on with their lives, and then somehow he comes back. And nobody in the show questions why. The most famous death happens in Life of Brian, Season 12, Episode 6. Brian is setting up a street hockey net in the driveway when a car hits him at full speed. He's rushed to the vet. The family gathers around him as he dies. He recovers just enough to tell them he loves them, and then he's gone. The show holds on this. It doesn't cut to a joke. Peter gives a speech at the funeral. They bury him. A month passes in the show's timeline. The family adopts a new dog named Vinny, an Italian-accented replacement who moves into the household and starts filling Brian's role. For 2 full episodes, Brian Griffin is dead. Then in Christmas Guy, Season 12, Episode 8, Stewie is at the mall and spots a past version of himself, a Stewie from earlier in the timeline who had travelled forward in time to buy Christmas toys early. Stewie borrows that version's time return pad, goes back to the exact moment before Brian's death, and pushes him out of the car's path. Brian survives. The timeline resets. Everyone acts like the death never happened. But think about what actually occurred here. If Brian died, if his brain stopped receiving oxygen, if his neurons fired their last electrical impulses and went dark, then preventing the car accident in an alternate timeline doesn't bring back the same Brian. It creates a different timeline where a version of Brian never got hit. The original Brian, the one who told his family he loved them with his dying breath, is still dead. His consciousness ended. Stewie didn't save Brian. He selected a different version of Brian from a different timeline and loaded him into the present, unless Brian isn't operating on human rules. Unless he's operating on cat rules. In the episode 420, Peter adopts a cat named James. Through a series of events, Peter accidentally kills the cat. When his friends panic, Peter casually says that cats have 9 lives and proceeds to kill the cat 8 more times, counting down with each death. Blood splatters across the screen. It's played for horrific comedy, but it establishes something critical about the Family Guy universe. Cats in this world, literally, have 9 lives. Not metaphorically. They have 9 separate life cycles. Each death burns through one, and once all 9 are exhausted, the cat is permanently dead. And Brian is part cat. The show reveals this when Brian takes a DNA test and discovers he's 1% cat. The episode treats it as a joke. Brian starts acting like a cat, clawing furniture, hissing at the vacuum cleaner. But DNA doesn't lie in this show. If Brian carries feline genetics, he carries feline traits. And if cats canonically have 9 lives in the Family Guy universe, then Brian being part cat means he has access to that same system, even if it's diluted by his dog genetics. Which means every time Brian dies, he's not dying permanently. He's burning through one of his available lives. And when Stewie intervenes with time travel, the time machine isn't rewriting history. It's navigating to a point in the timeline where Brian's next available life loads in. Stewie thinks he's fixing a timeline. He's actually just skipping ahead in the queue. If you start counting Brian's canonical deaths across the series, the numbers add up in an uncomfortable way. There's the chocolate poisoning death shown in Stewie Griffin: The Untold Story, where Brian ends up in heaven Alongside famous artists, there's the car accident death in Life of Brian. There's an alternate Brian who jumps to his death from a Vegas hotel balcony in Roads to Vegas. There's a version of Brian who shows up with his throat cut in Back to the Pilot. By conservative count, Brian has burned through at least 4 lives, possibly more if off-screen deaths occurred in unseen timelines. This also explains something that's always been strange about Brian's aging. When the series started, Brian was about 6 or 7 years old. Over 20 plus seasons of the show, he's aged to approximately 10. Dogs age roughly 7 years for every human year, meaning Brian should be approaching geriatric status by now. He should be struggling to walk, dealing with severe health issues, showing obvious signs of advanced age, but he's healthy, active, mobile, and functional. The show's own fact sheet confirms his age has barely moved, despite decades of real-world time passing. If Brian's 9-life system resets his biology slightly with each new life, not back to puppy age, but with refreshed cellular function, then his slow aging makes sense. Each time he burns through a life, the degradation resets just enough to keep him functional. He's not immortal, he's buffered, running on spare copies of himself that keep his body from falling apart the way a normal dog's would. And here's the part that makes this theory genuinely sad. Brian doesn't remember his previous deaths. In Christmas Guy, after Stewie saves him from the car, Brian has no memory of dying, no memory of the vet, no memory of his funeral or his family's grief. Of course he doesn't. That was a different Brian. The Brian who died at the vet was life number 2. The Brian who Stewie pulled from the timeline is life number 3. His last memory is setting up the hockey net. Then suddenly, Stewie is shoving him out of the way of a car for no apparent reason. The memories don't transfer between lives. Each Brian is a fresh iteration, carrying forward personality and knowledge up to the point where the timeline branched, but not the death itself. This is why Brian sometimes exhibits a kind of vague existential dread. In the episode Brian and Stewie locked in a bank vault overnight, Brian admits he's afraid of dying and being forgotten. Not afraid of death itself, afraid of permanent death. He's haunted by half memories of lives he didn't live but somehow knows existed. He doesn't consciously know which life number he's on, but deep down he feels the absences. Stewie knows though. Stewie is a genius who understands temporal mechanics, genetic engineering, and consciousness transfer. If anyone has figured out that Brian has a finite number of lives remaining, it's Stewie, and that knowledge would terrify him. Because once those lives are gone, Brian is gone permanently. No time machine can fix it. You can't reload a save file that doesn't exist. In New Kidney in Town, Brian offers to give both his kidneys to Peter, a sacrifice that would kill him. Dr. Hartman intervenes before it happens, but Brian was ready to die. That willingness makes no sense for a normal dog facing permanent death, but it makes perfect sense for someone who knows, on some instinctive level, that death isn't permanent for him, that he has spare lives in the queue, that sacrificing one life for Peter is tragic but survivable. Stewie destroyed his time machine in Life of Brian. The show explains this as Stewie being tired of close calls during time travel adventures. But consider another possibility. What if Stewie checked the life counter and realised Brian was running low? What if he destroyed the machine to remove the temptation to keep burning through Brian's remaining lives? He tried to make Brian's current life permanent by refusing to access the next backup. But Brian died anyway, forcing Stewie to break his own rule and jump to the next life in the queue during Christmas Guy. Now Stewie lives with the knowledge that every reckless adventure, every near-death experience, every road to episode where they gamble their lives for laughs, brings them closer to the day when Stewie reaches for the time machine and nothing happens. The day Brian runs out of lives and the universe finally collects what it's owed. Brian doesn't know he's slowly dying, but Stewie does. And the 1% cat DNA that everyone laughed at isn't a punchline, it's a countdown. If you're enjoying this, consider subscribing, but we're just getting started. There are more mysteries waiting in the quiet parts of Quahog's history, in the spaces between jokes that nobody bothered to examine until now. And the next one lives on the same street as Brian, in the house right next door, behind a red door that opens onto something much darker than anyone realises. Because Brian isn't the only Spooner Street resident hiding a fractured identity behind a familiar face. His neighbour, the man everyone calls Quagmire, has been living with a secret that's been in plain sight for over 20 years. And once you understand what that secret is, his catchphrase stops being funny. Permanently. Glenn Quagmire. Born Glenn Quagglechek, according to the show's established canon. He changed it to Quagmire at some point, anglicising his Polish surname to assimilate into American military culture. He's 61 years old, according to the driver's licence shown in the season 7 episode Foxy Lady, though he looks decades younger, and explains this by saying he eats a lot of carrots. He's a former ensign in the United States Navy. He currently works as a commercial airline pilot. He lives at 29 Spooner Street, next door to the Griffins, and he is, without question, the most disturbing character on the show. Not because of the jokes, because of what the jokes are covering up. The theory is simple, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Glenn Quagmire doesn't fully exist as a single person. The man living at 29 Spooner Street is a fractured consciousness operating under two distinct behavioural modes. There's Glenn, the competent naval officer and airline pilot who is professional, articulate, and capable of genuine human connection. And there's the other one, the predatory personality fragment that hijacks his body whenever sexual stimuli appear. The one who says giggity, the one who does things Glenn would never do. And giggity isn't a catchphrase, it's a verbal trigger. It's the sound of one personality going offline and another one taking control. Watch how Quagmire's behaviour changes when he's operating as a pilot, or discussing military service, or talking about his father. His voice is different. Seth MacFarlane, who voices the character, drops the pitch. The cadence slows down. Quagmire speaks with measured professionalism and clear articulation. He's coherent, proud, competent. He's Glenn. But then, someone makes a derogatory comment, or Lois says something with even a hint of inappropriate comments, and the switch happens instantly. The voice accelerates, the head starts bobbing, the jaw drops, the body language becomes aggressive, invasive, giggity. All right, that isn't just comedic exaggeration, that is two different people inhabiting the same body, alternating control based on environmental triggers. And the trigger is always the same, his thoughts. The trauma behind this split is canonical. In the Stewer way, Quagmire reveals he lost his innocence when he was very young. A worker who was at the family's house mistreated him while he was still just a boy. The show states this explicitly. There is a part of him that can't talk about what happened because the words don't exist for someone who was taken advantage of before they even understood what it meant. That's not a joke that gets walked back or retconned. That's the show establishing that Glenn Quagmire's entire relationship with sexuality originates from severe childhood sexual abuse. Children who experience sexual trauma during developmental stages often develop dissociative coping mechanisms. They're consciousness fragments to compartmentalize horror that a child's brain simply can't process. One part of the psyche retreats inward, clinging to functionality, to normalcy, to whatever anchors them to the world they knew before the trauma. The other part absorbs the damage and becomes something else, something frozen in time, endlessly reenacting the moment of violation, trying to regain control over an event where all control was stolen. Glenn became a pilot because his father was a pilot. Dan Quagmire was a decorated Navy pilot, a Vietnam War veteran who flew supply missions into hostile territory. Glenn idolised him, wanted to be like him, joined the Navy to follow in his footsteps. But Dan was also absent for most of Glenn's childhood, deployed overseas, leaving Glenn alone in a house with a mother who, according to the episode Quagmire's Mom from season 13, was hyperactive herself and acted inappropriately toward Glenn. The show implies they've had an illicit relationship, though it never fully confirms it. So Glenn grew up in a house where his hero was gone, and his mother was a predator. At age 6, a plumber assaulted him. His father wasn't there to protect him. His mother likely didn't care. Glenn's psyche fractured. The Glenn personality retreated inward, clinging to the dream of becoming a pilot like his dad. Flying meant escape. Flying meant control. Flying meant distance from the house where the trauma happened. And as long as Glenn is 30,000 feet in the air, he's safe. Because the other personality, the giggity personality, doesn't know how to fly. That one is a 6-year-old trauma response frozen in time. That one can't operate a cockpit. Glenn is the functional adult who learned a skill and built a career. When Glenn is piloting, the giggity personality goes dormant because there are no sexual stimuli at cruising altitude. The cockpit is the only place where Glenn remains in full control. But the moment he lands, it starts again. The show makes the personality switch explicit through one of its most famous running gags. Whenever Lois says something with even a faint sexual connotation, Quagmire appears instantly. Sometimes he's in a window. Sometimes his voice echoes from off-screen. He materializes from nowhere, shouting giggity or all right. The show plays this as comedic teleportation. But what it actually depicts is a dissociative switch so instantaneous that the show can only render it as magical appearance. The giggity personality lives just beneath Glenn's consciousness, constantly monitoring for sexual stimuli, and the moment sex enters the environment, it shoves Glenn aside and seizes control. The military background is where the split becomes most visible. Quagmire is canonically described as an ace pilot who can fly anything and is extraordinarily good at it. In episodes where he's actually piloting, not wearing the uniform for a visual gag, but actually operating an aircraft, he demonstrates real skill, tactical awareness, and professional competence. He takes his job seriously, and when someone acts irresponsibly around aircraft, it genuinely angers him, as Peter discovers when he treats the cockpit like a playground. That anger isn't the giggity personality's anger. The giggity one doesn't get offended by incompetence. That's Glenn protecting something sacred. Flight, the one thing that's his, the one space where the trauma can't reach him. The most compelling evidence of the split comes from Screams of Silence, the story of Brenda Q, Quagmire's sister. Brenda is being physically abused by her boyfriend, Jeff Fiekelman. In that episode, Quagmire displays focused rage, tactical planning, and lethal competence. He tracks Jeff down and kills him. Not in a chaotic, sexually driven frenzy, with controlled, deliberate military precision. That's Glenn, the functional adult, the Navy ensign who earned his rank and served with distinction. For one entire episode, Glenn is fully in control, and the giggity personality doesn't appear once, because the situation required a competent soldier, not a sex-addicted trauma response. Then Jeff was dead. Brenda was safe, and the giggity personality came back, because it always comes back. His brother Gary adds another layer to this. Gary Quagmire is deaf and essentially invisible in the show's narrative. He exists in exactly one episode and is barely mentioned anywhere else. A deaf brother who can't hear, can't process sound, can't engage with the auditory world. In dissociative frameworks, a sibling who represents silence, who embodies the inability to hear or speak about what happened, reads as symbolic projection. Gary is the part of Glenn that went mute after the trauma, the part that can't talk about what happened because the words don't exist for a young child who was mistreated before he understood what it even meant. Quagmire knows something is wrong with him. In Quagmire's Mom, after being arrested for inappropriate conduct, he tries to tell the judge that his impulses are his mother's fault, that being raised by a hyperactive parent damaged him. The judge rejects this, saying he's a grown man who should take responsibility for his own actions. Brian tells him the same thing in Jerome is the New Black, laying out a comprehensive list of everything wrong with Quagmire's behaviour and telling him to own it. But Glenn can't own what Glenn doesn't do. Glenn doesn't commit those acts. The other personality does, and Glenn has no control over it. He's co-conscious, sometimes aware of what the giggity personality does, horrified by it, but powerless to stop the switching. Because the dissociation, it's too deeply rooted. The disorder began when he was 6 years old. It's been running for over 55 years. The neural pathways are carved too deep to redirect. Glenn Quagmire is a 61-year-old man with a psychological fracture that dates back to early childhood. The Glenn personality is everything he was supposed to be before the trauma. Competent, professional, capable of friendship and duty and genuine human connection. The giggity personality is everything the trauma made him. Compulsive, joyless, predatory, frozen at the developmental stage where the assault happened, endlessly reenacting the violation, with the roles reversed, trying to rewrite a story that can never be rewritten. The giggity catchphrase isn't celebration. It's a repetitive verbal pattern indicating dissociative state activation. Every time Quagmire says giggity, he's announcing that Glenn is no longer in control, that the other one has taken over, that the 6-year-old boy who was attacked in his own home is running the body now, and he's going to do the only thing he knows how to do. Glenn tries to escape every time he climbs into a cockpit, 30,000 feet up, where it's quiet, where the giggity can't reach, where he's just a pilot doing his job, and every time he lands, the cycle starts again. Giggity isn't a joke, it's a cry for help that Glenn can't hear anymore, because Glenn is up in the air, flying away from himself, trying to outrun the monster wearing his face. He'll never land safely, because the moment he touches ground, giggity is waiting. Now, speaking of people who don't belong in the reality they're stuck in, the next mystery involves the most inexplicable character in the entire show, a man who sees things nobody else can see, who perceives truths about the world that no other character can process, a man who the government may have deliberately placed in Quahog to keep him contained. Mayor Adam West. Mayor Adam West doesn't belong in Quahog. He might not belong in this reality at all. And somewhere, in some classified facility, there's a file that explains why a former television actor with documented reality-breaking abilities was strategically relocated to a small Rhode Island town and given mayoral authority as part of an ongoing observation experiment. Adam West has been mayor of Quahog since season 2, when he won the election. That was over 20 years of showtime spanning real-world decades. Every other character shows at least minor aging. Meg and Chris grew from children to teenagers. Stewie developed more complex speech patterns. Brian aged from approximately 7 to 10. But Adam West remained frozen. His driver's license lists his age, but in multiple episodes he references events from the 1960s as though he experienced them recently, not 40-plus years ago. He exists outside Quahog's already unstable timeline, operating on a completely different temporal axis that doesn't sync with anyone else's experience of time. And the things he says, the things that everyone dismisses as insane ramblings from a crazy old man, they're not crazy if you think about them carefully enough. In one episode, West tells Meg he spent $100,000 of taxpayer money investigating who was stealing his water. Meg treats this as insane fiscal mismanagement, but West's actual concern is that water goes down drains and into the ground, and no one can tell him where it ends up. In a cartoon, he's technically right to be confused by this. Where does animated water go? It flows into drawn pipes that lead nowhere. The animators create it, then delete it from the scene. West is perceiving something that no other character perceives. The fact that his reality is being actively constructed and deconstructed by forces he can't fully identify. His solution, trying to negotiate with Luke Perry about the water theft, reads as nonsense, until you realise that Luke Perry is a real actor, and West might be attempting to communicate with someone he recognizes as existing on the same ontological level as himself. Another real person playing a character in a constructed world. In You May Now Kiss the Guy Who Receives, Season 4, Episode 25, West wastes taxpayer money on a solid gold statue of Diggum, the cereal mascot. The town protests. He tries to distract them by jingling keys. This works in cartoon logic. Jingling keys is a standard animation shortcut for distraction. But when it fails in this particular instance, West gets hit with a brick and says something deeply strange. "My God, I'm a tomato." That's not random absurdity. In that scene, his character model is drawn with a simplified shape, circular head, reddish skin tone. From a meta perspective, he is a tomato-shaped object with a face. The animators drew him that way. West is the only character who looks at himself and sees what he actually is, a collection of coloured shapes arranged to look human. Everyone else in Quahog is locked into believing they're real people. West sees through it. The light bright incident pushes this even further. When pieces go missing from a light bright toy that spells his name, West has an existential crisis. My name isn't Adam Way. Or is it? Who am I? He's confronting identity dissolution in real time. His name, the signifier of his selfhood, is incomplete. And from a meta perspective, this is literally true. He's voiced by an actor named Adam West, playing a character named Adam West. He's not a person, he's a name on a script. When the visual representation of that name becomes incomplete, he perceives his own existence becoming unstable. He's not crazy, he's accurately describing his condition as a fictional construct. The KGB revelation adds another dimension. In Spies Reminiscent of Us, it's revealed that West is a KGB sleeper agent who can be activated by a specific trigger phrase. The show presents this as comedy. But what it actually tells us is that West has been monitored, programmed, and deployed by government intelligence agencies for decades. The KGB trigger phrase is from the Cold War era, which would place West's time as an intelligence asset in the 1960s, right around when the real Adam West starred in the Batman television series. What if that show wasn't just a show? What if giving West a fictional superhero identity to inhabit was the first attempt to contain his meta-awareness by channeling it into a structured narrative? It failed. He kept perceiving the boundaries of his fictional role. So they tried something different. They put him in an animated world, where reality is already unstable, where inconsistency is expected, where breaking the fourth wall is just another gag instead of evidence of cognitive anomaly. His behaviour in office makes more sense through this lens. Cementing coffins to prevent zombie uprisings is reasonable if you know that characters in your world can return from death, which they can, and have, multiple times in Family Guy. Dispatching police to search for a fictional movie character makes sense if you know that fictional characters and real people occupy the same space in your reality, which they do in the Family Guy universe. Marrying his own hand makes sense if you've realised that relationships in your world are arbitrary constructs assigned by writers. West isn't governing insanely. He's governing for the reality he actually lives in, which is fundamentally different from the reality everyone else thinks they're in, and the citizens of Quahog never permanently remove him from office. Why? Because someone very high up has mandated that West remains mayor. His position isn't truly democratic, it's assigned. He's not governing Quahog. He's being observed while playing at governance, and the town is his laboratory. The real Adam West died on June 9th, 2017. The show struggled to process this. They wrote the character out in the season 17 episode, Adam West High, and replaced him with a new mayor, Wild West, voiced by Sam Elliott, starting in season 19. But before West was officially written out, his ghost appeared in No Giggity, No Doubt, existing as a spectral presence before his canonical death was even established. He was a ghost before he was dead. He existed in the future and the past simultaneously because his consciousness was never bound to Quahog's linear timeline. In Catfight, Peter uses a Ghostbusters proton pack to capture West's ghost and holds him until the town can find a new mayor. This is the show acknowledging that West's death doesn't follow normal rules. His ghost is still active, still functional, still attempting to participate in governance. Death for Adam West isn't an ending. It's a phase shift. The most chilling piece of evidence comes from a suggestion in the show that West's bizarre behaviour is actually a performance, a deliberate smokescreen to hide something else. If West acted sane, if he made coherent policy decisions, if he behaved like a normal mayor, the writers, the government, the forces that put him in Quahog would have to acknowledge his meta-awareness directly. By acting crazy, he maintains cover. The audience thinks he's comic relief. The observers think he's contained. And West quietly continues testing the boundaries of his containment, jumping out windows, surviving injuries that should kill him, making statements that describe the true nature of his reality, while everyone around him dismisses it as madness. Adam West doesn't die in Family Guy. He transcends. His death is just him, finally breaking free of the containment zone, ascending to whatever space exists outside the boundaries of an animated television show. The government lost their subject. The show lost its mayor, and the answer to West's water question, where does it really go, is nowhere. Because none of it is real, and Adam West knew that. He always knew. That's why they put him in Quahog, and that's why they could never fully contain what he was. Now the question of how characters die and come back in Quahog leads us directly to the next mystery. Because the entity responsible for managing death in this universe isn't what anyone thinks it is. We've been assuming that Death, the character who shows up in a black robe with a scythe, is some kind of ancient cosmic force, an inevitable presence that exists outside of time, beyond understanding, immovable and eternal. But the evidence tells a completely different story. Death isn't some all-powerful being. Death isn't even one being. Death is an employee, a middle manager, a franchise operator running a mortality business in one small corner of the animated multiverse. And his performance reviews are not good. Here's something that nobody talks about, but the show keeps proving over and over again. Death isn't one entity doing one job. Death is a business model, a franchise, a corporate structure for managing mortality across different realities. And Family Guy's Death, the guy in the black robe who shows up to collect bodies, he's just the regional manager for this particular cartoon universe. The most obvious evidence is something that hides in plain sight. Death has two completely different voices. In his first appearance, the Season 2 episode, Death is a Bitch, Death was voiced by Norm Macdonald. Then for every subsequent appearance, starting with Wasted Talent later in the same season, Adam Carolla took over the role. The official explanation is that Macdonald was committed to another show, a Fox sitcom called A Minute with Stan Hooper, and couldn't return. But consider what this means from the perspective of the show's internal reality. Death didn't just sound different, he was different. Same job title, same black robe, same scythe, but a different entity underneath. And the physical evidence supports this. When Death takes off his hood in Wasted Talent, he's got a bare skull. Clean white, just bones. But in Death Lives, when Peter pulls down Death's hood, it's something else entirely. A skull crawling with bugs and snakes, organisms moving in and out of the eye sockets and mouth. That's not an art style change. That's not a continuity error. Those are two different beings. Two different deaths, working the same territory at different points in the timeline. The show introduces additional evidence that Death isn't operating alone. In one episode, a separate entity called Death's dog shows up independently to ask whether someone choked on a dinner roll. Brian says the person recovered. Death's dog apologizes and leaves. This isn't Death's pet. This is a co-worker, a separate entity with its own jurisdiction. Death handles human mortality. Death's dog handles animal mortality. They're colleagues, different branches of the same franchise. The way a large corporation has separate departments handling different client bases. Death himself states, in Death is a Bitch, that he's only responsible for human beings. That's a very specific territorial limitation for something that's supposed to be the universal embodiment of mortality. He's not death for everything. He's human death for this particular animated universe. That's a job description, not a cosmic identity. And it gets stranger when you look up the chain of command. When Death himself dies in a car accident involving Carter Pewterschmidt, who shows up to process Death's transition? A larger, more imposing figure called Super Death. Super Death tells regular Death that he's being reincarnated as a child in China. Death disappears, immediately reappears, and reveals he was born as a girl in China. Then the show moves on, and regular Death is back at work in later episodes. Consider what this proves. Death can die, and when Death dies, there's a supervisor who handles the transition. Super Death isn't a random, powerful being. He's Death's boss, the regional manager's manager, the corporate overseer who processes what happens when a franchise operator goes offline. And the fact that Death gets reincarnated and comes back to work means this isn't a permanent position. It's a job you cycle through. You do your time as Death, you die, you get reborn, someone else eventually takes over your territory. This is why Death is so bad at his job. He's not some ancient cosmic force with millennia of experience managing the boundary between life and the void. He's a guy who is assigned a franchise position, managing mortality for one specific cartoon universe. In Death is a Bitch, Death sprains his ankle, chasing Peter, and has to stay at the Griffin house for days recovering. During that time, nobody can die. Humanity becomes temporarily immortal. People can't feel pain. This isn't because Death is the metaphysical concept of mortality itself. It's because he's the sole franchisee for this territory. When he goes offline, there's no backup, no substitute, just one employee managing all human deaths in the Family Guy universe. And when he gets injured, the whole service goes down. Death lives with his mother. He complains about how hard it is to date because he keeps accidentally killing women. He hates his job. He gets injured by soccer balls and sprained ankles. He makes mistakes constantly. This is not the profile of an eternal cosmic entity. This is the profile of someone who took a job they're not qualified for and is just trying to get through each shift without screwing up too badly. His powers are inconsistent in a way that makes no sense for a cosmic being, but makes perfect sense for a franchise employee operating under contractual limitations. He can time travel, as shown in Meet the Quagmires, when he grants Peter's wish to return to 1984. He can take people on journeys through their own memories, as he does with Peter in Death Lives. These aren't powers you'd expect Death to have, but if Death is a franchise manager responsible for maintaining continuity in a sitcom universe, time travel abilities make sense as part of his standard service package. He's not just managing who dies when, he's managing the narrative, making sure the show's timeline holds together, helping characters understand their own story arcs. And here's the thing that really crystallizes the franchise model. Death can't consistently kill people by touching them. In I Take Thee Quagmire, anyone who touches Death's bones dies instantly. But in Death is a Bitch, Stewie massages Death's sprained ankle, and nothing happens because Death is out of commission. Death touches Peter multiple times throughout the series with no effect. The rules keep changing because they're not natural laws. They're company policies, franchise guidelines that get updated and reinterpreted. You can kill people by touching them, except when the narrative needs them alive. You can time travel, but only when the plot requires it. These are the terms of employment for a position in a corporate mortality management system, not the immutable laws of the universe. The franchise model also explains why the show can replace Death without the characters noticing. Norm Macdonald, Death, and Adam Carolla. Death aren't the same entity with a different voice. They're two different Deaths who held the same franchise position at different times. The bear skull death and the bugs and snakes skull death aren't animation errors. They're different operators in the same role. When one death's contract expires or they get reincarnated, someone new takes over, and the residents of Quahog never notice the difference. Because at the end of the day, death is just a job. And as long as someone is wearing the robe and carrying the scythe, the franchise keeps running. Somewhere out there, in whatever meta-dimensional corporate headquarters manages mortality across all animated universes, there's a whole office full of deaths, getting assigned to different shows, filing paperwork with super death about timeline inconsistencies, attending mandatory training sessions on soul collection procedures, complaining about difficult clients like Peter Griffin, who refuse to die when they're supposed to. Death isn't a being. Death is a position, a role, a franchise opportunity for entities willing to manage mortality in exchange for some time travel powers, a lot of responsibility, and apparently very little respect. Family Guy's death is just one manager in a cosmic corporation. Same black robe, same scythe, different entity underneath, running the same mortality franchise, one incompetent collection at a time. The franchise explains how death operates, but it doesn't explain why the Griffin family is so hard to kill in the first place. Death shows up to collect them, and somehow they keep surviving. They walk away from explosions. They heal from injuries that would kill anyone else. They endure physical trauma that violates every law of biology and medicine, and they just keep going. Why? For that answer, we need to stop looking at who manages death in Quahog and start looking at what's been flowing through the town's water supply for decades. Because the Griffins aren't just weird-looking cartoon characters. They might be mutants, and the evidence is everywhere. Nobody in Quahog looks normal. The animation style accounts for some of that. But the Griffins are on another level entirely, even by the standards of their own show. Peter's chin has a cleft so deep it dominates his entire facial structure, and his head connects to his body without any visible separation between chin and neck. Just one continuous mass of flesh. Meg's eyes are abnormally large compared to every other character. Chris looks like someone copy-pasted Peter's face onto a teenage body without any genetic variation from Lois whatsoever. The same overweight build, the same round face, the same massive chin. That's not how genetics normally works. Children take traits from both parents with natural variation. But Chris is Peter, just younger, like a genetic photocopy, where the maternal DNA didn't get a vote. The smoking gun for why the Griffins look the way they do is right there in the show, hiding in episodes that most people treat as standalone gags. The Quahog oil refinery has been dumping toxic waste into Lake Quahog for years. The show doesn't hide this. In the episode It Takes a Village Idiot, and I Married One, the Griffin family goes swimming at the lake and discovers the contamination firsthand. Their hair falls out immediately on contact. The toxic waste is so concentrated, it causes instant physical deformity. Mayor Adam West admitted on the record that he sanctioned the dumping in exchange for free hair oil, and when Lois becomes mayor and tries to clean up the lake, the refinery's CEO bribes her to let the dumping resume. The waste flows again. And what does that waste actually do to people? The show tells us directly. Jake Tucker, the kid with the upside-down face, jumps into the contaminated lake and surfaces with his face corrected. The chemicals rearranged his facial structure back to a human default configuration. That means the toxins in Lake Quahog don't just poison people. They alter genetic expression and physical development on contact. They mutate, they restructure, they rewrite biology. Now consider that Peter was born in Quahog. Lois was raised in Quahog. Their entire lives have been spent in a town built around water contaminated with industrial chemicals. The harbour is poisoned, as confirmed in Brian the Closer when a neighbour warns Quagmire about the toxic harbour. The lake is poisoned. The groundwater connects to everything. These characters have been marinating in environmental toxins since before most of them were born. The Super Griffin segment from Family Guy viewer mail pushes this even further. A truck carrying nuclear waste crashes in front of the Griffin household. The entire family gets drenched, and every single one of them develops abilities that shouldn't exist. Peter can shapeshift, Lois gains superhuman strength, Stewie's cranium doubles in size, Brian develops superhuman speed, Chris develops the ability to generate and control fire. Even Meg's fingernails grow and shrink on command. The show is telling us, in its own exaggerated way, that the Griffin family's DNA is reactive to toxic chemicals. They don't just get sick from exposure, they mutate. Their genes respond to contamination by expressing abnormal traits. And when Mayor Adam West tries to replicate the experiment by exposing himself to the same radioactive waste, he gets lymphoma, cancer, a normal human response to toxic chemical exposure. But the Griffins don't get cancer. They get superpowers. Because their DNA is already so altered by decades of environmental exposure that additional contamination doesn't kill them. It just makes them more mutated. Peter's brain tells the same story. In the episode Petarded, Peter takes an IQ test administered by a professor from the Rhode Island State Office of Mental Health. The results place his IQ at approximately 70, just below the threshold for intellectual disability. This isn't a joke that gets retconned. This is established fact within the show. Peter Griffin is medically, legally, and scientifically classified as intellectually disabled. And Chris inherits the same traits. The show tells us that Chris begins exhibiting similar cognitive impairments as he grows older, that his parents had him tested, and that the tests showed no known mental disorders, meaning his behaviour is attributed to simple, inherited stupidity. But here's what's strange. The cognitive impairment only affects the male children. Peter is impaired, Chris is impaired, but Meg shows no cognitive deficiency, and Stewie has an IQ estimated between 250 and 300, so high it can't be properly measured. The same family produced both extreme intellectual disability and extreme genius, both extremes of human intelligence in the same household. That's not normal genetic distribution. That's the signature of corrupted DNA expressing abnormally across different carriers. The cognitive impairment passes from father to son through what appears to be a Y chromosome-linked mutation. Peter has it, Chris has it, Meg and Stewie don't, because the mutation travels through the male line. And both Peter and Chris share not just the cognitive traits, but the exact same physical deformities. The same massive chin, the same obesity, the same facial structure. Father and son look like clones of each other, suggesting the mutation doesn't just affect brain function, it controls physical development as well, overriding the maternal contribution to produce a carbon copy of the paternal template. Where does this mutation come from? The environment. Decades of toxic waste exposure in Quahog. The oil refinery dumping chemicals. The poisoned harbour. The radioactive waste that gives the Griffins superpowers instead of cancer. Peter's mother, Thelma, tried to abort him in Mexico because something felt wrong with the pregnancy. Peter was born prematurely at 6 months, which suggests his body was developing abnormally fast. Lois tried to abort Chris too. She drank and smoked heavily during the pregnancy, trying to force a miscarriage. But both children survived. Because Griffin genes don't respond to normal biological stresses the way regular human genes do. They adapt, they mutate, they survive. And Dr. Hartman sees all of this. He's been the Griffin family's physician for years. He runs their tests, he performs their exams, and he never does anything properly. He's rated as the worst doctor in the hospital. He uses misleading language that the Griffins interpret as diagnoses, but turn out to be something else entirely. He tells them they're fine, when they're clearly not. But Hartman isn't incompetent. The show reveals that he has the capability to clone organisms. He has access to genetic manipulation technology. He has a relationship with Carter Pewterschmidt and the Pewterschmidt pharmaceutical empire. A man who can create a man-sized hostile chicken in a laboratory is not a bumbling small-town doctor who keeps making mistakes. He's something else. He's a monitor. His job isn't to cure the griffins. His job is to watch them, to document their mutations, to see how far the genetic corruption can progress before it becomes dangerous, and to make sure the data keeps flowing. That's why he never properly treats them. That's why he constantly tells them they're fine, because treating them would interfere with the experiment, and the experiment is what matters. Think about how many times the griffins should have died. Peter has survived explosions, falls from extreme heights, multiple gunshot wounds, car crashes, and every form of physical trauma imaginable. A normal human would have been killed dozens of times over by the injuries Peter sustains in a single season, but he doesn't die. He regenerates, he heals. His mutated physiology keeps him alive through trauma that would destroy anyone else. The same goes for the entire family. Chris survives being set on fire. Meg survives brutal physical abuse. Stewie survives building weapons that explode in his face. Brian survives being hit by cars. The Griffin family has a healing factor that no normal human possesses. The Quahog oil refinery has been dumping waste for decades. The harbour is contaminated. The lake is toxic. The entire town has been living in an environmental disaster zone since before any of these characters were born. And the Griffins, who've spent their entire lives drinking that water and breathing that air, have developed mutations that make them nearly indestructible. Their massive chins, their abnormal eyes, their intellectual disabilities, their impossible survival rate, all of it traces back to the same source: industrial pollution in Quahog's water supply, rewriting the genetic code of everyone who lives there. The Griffins aren't surviving despite their mutations. They're surviving because of them. Their corrupted DNA has given them abilities that normal humans don't have: enhanced healing, increased durability, survival instincts that bypass logic and reason. They're the unintended product of decades of environmental poisoning. And Dr. Hartman, their family physician, isn't treating them. He's taking notes. But the Griffin mutations don't just affect their bodies, they affect the space around them, because the house the Griffins live in operates under rules that no normal house follows. Rooms appear and disappear, layouts change between episodes, catastrophic damage repairs itself overnight without explanation. And the address itself, 31 Spooner Street, has a history so strange that the United States military once classified it as a national security threat. The evidence suggests that the Griffin home isn't really a house at all. It's something else entirely, something built to contain what lives inside it. Houses don't work the way the Griffin house works. When fire destroys the interior in A Very Special Family Guy Freaking Christmas, Season 3, Episode 16, burning everything down to the studs after an ember from the fireplace lands on the rug, and Brian's attempts to put it out fail, because the fire extinguisher turns out to be a novelty item filled with plastic snakes. The house is completely destroyed. Brian suffers burns. The furniture is gone. The walls are blackened. Lois has a complete breakdown, screaming about paper towels. The interior of the Griffin home is reduced to ash. Next episode, the house is perfect. Same furniture, same wall decorations, same carpet, same layout. Not repaired, not rebuilt, reset, like someone hit undo on reality itself. And it's not just the Christmas fire. The living room carpet was yellow in seasons 1 through 3. Then in season 4, it changed to green. Brian actually asks about this at one point, and Peter claims he burned the old carpet and replaced it while the family was out. But that's Peter's brain creating an explanation for something it can't process. The house changed its default configuration between production seasons, and Peter's consciousness smoothed over the inconsistency by inventing a story that made sense. Rooms appear and disappear between episodes. In one episode, there's a downstairs bathroom that doesn't match the house's known layout and never shows up again. In the Christmas fire episode, there's a functional fireplace in the living room that only exists in that one installment. The bathroom in Peter and Lois's bedroom switches sides depending on the episode. Right side of the bed in one episode, left side in another. These aren't animation mistakes. These are the house generating temporary spaces as needed, creating rooms when the narrative requires them, and collapsing them back into non-existence when they're no longer necessary. But the real smoking gun comes from the season 2 episode E Peterbus Unum. Peter applies for a permit to build a swimming pool. The city reviews his application and discovers something that should be impossible. The Griffin house at 31 Spooner Street does not appear on any maps, not outdated maps, not incomplete maps, no maps. The house is physically there. People can see it. Mail gets delivered. The family pays utilities. The city knows they exist because they file taxes. But according to every official municipal record, 31 Spooner Street doesn't exist. That's not a bureaucratic oversight. That's deliberate erasure. Someone went through every map, every zoning document, every city record, and removed 31 Spooner Street from the official record of physical space. And when Peter discovers this and declares his house to be the independent nation of Pretoria, the United States government doesn't laugh it off. They militarize the border. They cut utilities. They impose sanctions. They fire missiles at his property. The full force of the American military responds to one man's joke of a country, treating it as a legitimate geopolitical threat. Why? Because the government knows what that house really is. They know what happens if Peter Griffin is allowed to exist outside their jurisdiction. The house wasn't missing from the maps by accident. It was removed because it can't be accurately represented on maps. Maps are attempts to create stable representations of physical space. And 31 Spooner Street doesn't occupy stable physical space. The show confirms the address is 31 Spooner Street, Quahog, Rhode Island. Zip code 00093, per the episode Boston Stewie. The Family Guy wiki confirms that for many years, the home appeared on no maps of the street or city. And in multiple episodes, including Peter, Caviar Eater, and A Fish Out of Water, Peter sells or temporarily loses control of the deed, suggesting that ownership of the house is unstable, transferable, contested, as if the house itself resists being owned by any single entity. In Petergeist, we learn the house was built over a Native American burial ground. Chief Diamond Phillips haunts the house after Peter digs up the bones. Now, hauntings don't work in normal reality, but in a house that exists as a liminal space built on ground that was already spiritually unstable, the burial ground isn't the cause of the haunting. It's proof that the house was deliberately built on thin ground, on the boundary between states of existence, because that kind of ground is what you need to anchor a structure that exists slightly out of phase with normal reality. Every house on Spooner Street operates by similar rules. Before Joe Swanson moved into 33 Spooner Street, a previous tenant electrocuted himself in the bathtub using Peter's toaster during a custody battle. He died. The house reset. Joe moved in. Same house, new configuration, new resident, and Joe himself is one of the most obvious anomalies on the entire street. He's paralysed from the waist down. Can't walk, can't use his legs, except he possesses immense upper body strength and performs feats that would be impossible for even an able-bodied Olympic athlete. In one episode, he uses a cable to arrive at a cliff before 3 other people while in his wheelchair, dodging trees and squirrels, then climbs a tree using the legs that are supposed to be paralysed. His legs have been restored and re-paralysed at least 5 separate times through completely different mechanisms. He regains movement briefly in one episode, then his son Kevin accidentally crashes into him and re-paralyzes him. He gets experimental surgery that allows him to walk, then shoots himself in the spine to re-paralyze himself after becoming insufferable. His spine gets broken while skiing. Peter and Joe swap spines. Dr. Hartman leaves a cell phone inside Joe's back, making him quadriplegic. Joe's body exists in multiple states simultaneously. He is both paralyzed and not paralyzed, depending on which version of his reality is currently active. His wheelchair is a constant, an anchor point, but his legs phase in and out of functionality because his body is too unstable for any single physical configuration to hold permanently. And his origin story changes. He first says he was injured when he slipped off a roof while chasing the Grinch, tripping on a roller skate. Then in Joe's revenge, he reveals that story was a lie and he was actually shot by a drug dealer named Bobby Briggs. Two completely different backstories for the same injury. Multiple pasts bleeding through because Joe exists in a state where linear personal history can't maintain consistency. Cleveland at 30 Spooner Street. When the Cleveland show was cancelled, Cleveland moved back to the same house with his new family, as if the entire spin-off series never happened. And before Cleveland lived there, Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase rented the house from Loretta, Cleveland's first wife, in Spies reminiscent of Us. They were revealed to be government agents working undercover. Government agents embedded on Spooner Street, monitoring the neighbourhood from a rental property. Because of course there are government agents on Spooner Street. Someone has to watch the subjects. And Quagmire at 29 Spooner Street, a 61-year-old man who looks decades younger with superhuman stamina, a dissociative disorder rooted in childhood trauma, and a lifestyle that would hospitalise a normal human within weeks. Herbert at 35 Spooner Street, impossibly old, surviving for decades beyond any reasonable human lifespan alongside an equally ancient dog named Jessie. Every resident of Spooner Street is anomalous, every single one. Peter with his IQ of 70 and his ability to survive injuries that would kill any human being multiple times over. Joe with his quantum state paralysis and his superhuman strength. Cleveland with his supernatural calm no matter how absurd things get. Quagmire with his fractured identity and his impossible vitality. Herbert with his age that defies biology. These aren't neighbours who happen to be quirky. They're subjects, contained, housed in structures specifically designed to accommodate their anomalies and keep them from destabilising the rest of the world. The houses maintain the illusion. White siding, red door, suburban architecture. Normal from the outside, but inside they're bigger than they should be. They have basements that connect to impossible spaces, rooms that appear and disappear, configurations that shift between episodes. Because these structures aren't houses in the traditional sense, they're pocket dimensions, carefully calibrated containment zones where the rules of reality can bend just enough to accommodate the residents without the whole framework collapsing. That's why the houses reset after catastrophic damage. That's why rooms move. That's why the carpet changes colour. That's why 31 Spooner Street wasn't on any maps. These structures exist slightly out of phase with normal Quahog. They're anchored to the street, but they're not part of it the same way a normal house would be. They're overlaid onto regular geography. Accessible, but separate. And when Peter declared Pretoria and the government responded with military force, it wasn't about ego or pride or teaching a citizen a lesson. It was about panic. Because if Peter had figured out what his house really was, if he'd started testing the boundaries of the containment instead of just making pool jokes, the structure could have collapsed. The portal could have destabilised, and Spooner Street would have stopped being a quiet suburban neighbourhood and started being ground zero for something much worse. The houses aren't protecting the residents, they're protecting everything outside the houses from the residents. Peter Griffin with his invincible body, Joe Swanson with his quantum legs, Quagmire with his fractured identity, Cleveland with his unshakable calm. All of them too strange, too durable, too impossible to exist safely in normal space. So the government built containment pods disguised as suburban homes. Reality anchors that let the anomalies think they're living normal lives, while actually existing in carefully controlled pocket dimensions that reset whenever things break too badly. The illusion is the containment. Break the illusion and you break the seal. And nobody on Spooner Street has broken it yet, because the houses are too good at making their inhabitants believe everything is normal. But the houses can only control physical space. They can only manage the geometry of walls and rooms and carpet colours. They can't control time itself. And there's one resident of the Griffin household whose relationship with time doesn't make any sense at all. A woman who should be approaching 60 but hasn't aged a day since the Clinton administration. A woman whose personality transformed so completely between season 7 and season 8 that long-time viewers thought something had gone wrong with the writing. But maybe it wasn't the writing that changed. Maybe it was Lois. Because Lois Griffin doesn't age. And the reason why might be the darkest secret in the entire show. Lois Griffin doesn't age. Everyone who watches the show knows it on some level, but nobody says it out loud because the show doesn't want you to think about it too carefully. Flashbacks place her as an 18-year-old in 1984. That scene comes from Meet the Quagmires, where Peter travels back in time and encounters a young Lois at the country club, beautiful and carefree, jumping into the pool. If she was 18 in 1984, she should be approaching 60 years old by now, but she's not. She's 43, canonically, stated multiple times throughout the series. 43 years old, despite appearing in timelines that should make her nearly 60. And it's not just one flashback that doesn't add up. Peter and Lois's wedding is depicted in the 1990s with Lois as a young adult. If she was 25 in 1995, she should be 55 now. But she's 43. Always 43. The number is locked in place, like time moves around her but not through her. Like something is keeping her frozen at exactly this age, exactly this appearance. And the show's floating timeline is just the cover story they give you so you don't ask questions. Then there's her past, her wild past, the one she never talks about, unless forced. Lois dated Gene Simmons from Kiss. She had relationships with multiple famous rock musicians from the 1980s. She was a groupie, a party girl, living the rock and roll lifestyle while bands like Kiss were at their peak. Gene Simmons, the man whose entire stage persona was built around demonic imagery, the face paint, the blood spitting, the tongue, an act built on occult theatrics and the explicit imagery of darkness. Lois didn't just see him perform, she got close to him. Close enough that decades later, Peter still references it. Close enough that it became a permanent part of her history. And in a show where Satan is canonically real, where the devil makes deals and collects souls, and operates according to contracts and rules, the question becomes whether Lois's proximity to that world of theatrical darkness connected her to something more than a rock concert. Because something changed in Lois, and the timeline of that change is documented. For the first 7 seasons of Family Guy, roughly 1999 to 2009, Lois was good. Genuinely good. She was patient and loving, the moral centre of the family. She put up with Peter's stupidity with grace. She cared for her children. She tried to do the right thing, even when the right thing was hard. She was the anchor, the voice of reason, the person who held everything together when everything around her was falling apart. Then around season 8, something shifted. Lois stopped being patient. She became cruel. Her relationship with Meg, already strained, became actively hostile. She packed Meg's lunch with food scraps and included a photograph of herself eating chicken, just to taunt her. She gave up on her daughter in ways that went beyond neglect and entered the territory of psychological abuse. She became sexually promiscuous. Affairs, encounters with younger men, behaviour that bore no resemblance to the faithful wife from the early seasons. She became violent. Flashbacks reveal she killed a waitress during her honeymoon with Peter. She once killed a jaywalker. She strangled Chris during an argument. She kidnapped people when she didn't get Customer of the Month at Starbucks. She became a bodybuilder and used her strength to terrorise her family. Her voice changed. The actress Alex Borstein's portrayal shifted to something higher pitched, more nasal, more grating, the character started pronouncing Peter's name differently. Like the body wasn't maintaining the voice properly anymore. Like something was decaying at the edges. Now character flanderization happens in every long-running show. Characters become more extreme versions of themselves as writers run out of nuanced material and lean harder on established traits. Homer Simpson got dumber. Squidward got sadder. It happens. But Lois didn't become a more extreme version of herself. She became a different person entirely. Patient became cruel. Faithful became promiscuous. Moral became murderous. That's not flanderization. That's replacement. Nobody else in the show changed like this. Peter was always an idiot. Brian was always pretentious. Stewie was always violent. Meg was always bullied. Their personalities stayed consistent in direction, even as they became more exaggerated over time. But Lois went from being the best person in the household to being, arguably, the worst. From the character who held the family together to the character actively trying to destroy it. If you accept that something supernatural happened to Lois, the theory goes like this. Sometime in the mid-1980s, during her rock groupie years, Lois encountered something through her proximity to the occult theatre of the Kiss scene. Whether it was Gene Simmons himself or something she connected with through that world, she made contact with forces that offered her a deal. Stay young forever. Never age. Never lose your beauty. Never become the dried-up society matron her mother Barbara eventually became. Stay perfect. Stay desirable. Stay 43 forever. And the cost? Nothing she'd miss at first, just her conscience, her empathy, her capacity to feel guilt. Taken slowly, so slowly she wouldn't notice. She'd still be Lois, just colder, just a little more willing to do terrible things, just a little less bothered by the suffering of others. She took the deal. She was young and terrified of aging, surrounded by older women in her parents' social circle, who had become invisible and irrelevant the moment their looks faded. She watched what happened to women who grew old in the Pewterschmidt world. They became decorative objects, at best, forgotten at worst, so she said yes, and the clock stopped. The early seasons of the show represent the grace period, the years when the deal hadn't come due yet. Lois was still herself, still kind, still loving, because the payment was being extracted so gradually that neither she nor the audience could detect it. But by season 8, the erosion had reached critical mass. The goodness drained out, the empathy died, the capacity for love withered, and what was left was something that looked like Lois Griffin, but wasn't. Not fully, not anymore. Satan is real in the Family Guy universe. This is confirmed canon. In a picture's worth $1,000, Satan tries to claim Peter's soul, but discovers Peter has already sold it twice, once for Bee Gees tickets and once for half a Milky Way bar. Satan exists, he makes deals, he collects, he's bound by contracts and rules. Lois never mentions selling her soul, but she doesn't have to, because the evidence is written in her body, in her timeline, in the transformation that took her from nurturing mother to casual murderer over the span of a decade. She's living proof that deals with darkness are real in this universe, that eternal youth comes at a price, that the cost accumulates year by year, season by season, until there's nothing left of the person who made the deal. Stewie left a time bomb for Lois that will detonate on her 50th birthday. This is stated explicitly in the episode Lethal Weapons. 50, the age she'll never reach. Because if the deal prevents her from aging past 43, then 50 is the horizon she can never cross. 7 years away, forever. A countdown that never counts down because the clock stopped decades ago and will never start again. Season 22 showed signs of Lois beginning to redeem herself, starting to act kind again, starting to care about her children, starting to resemble the person she was in the early seasons. Whether this represents genuine character, growth, or a last-ditch attempt to reclaim her humanity before the final payment comes due is something only future seasons can answer. But the pattern remains. Lois Griffin has been 43 years old for over 25 years of real-world time. She appears in flashbacks spanning decades, and her face never changes. The show calls it a floating timeline, but every other piece of evidence points to something else, something older, something darker, something that was offered to a frightened young woman at a Kiss concert in 1985, and that she's been paying for ever since, one missing piece of her humanity at a time. Lois doesn't age because she can't. She traded that ability away, and the thing that wears her face now, the cold version, the cruel version, the one that packs garbage into her daughter's lunch and pronounces her husband's name wrong, that's not Lois deteriorating as a character. That's the price of the deal manifesting. The shell remaining while the soul is consumed. Eternal youth has a cost, and Lois is paying it. If you're still with us, we're heading into the final stretch now. And these last few mysteries are the ones that pull the entire fabric of the show apart. Because it turns out the characters know they're being watched, and the voices they hear laughing at their suffering aren't sound effects. They're real. They're us. Family Guy doesn't have a traditional laugh track. Most animated shows don't. The Simpsons never used one. South Park never used one. Animated comedies let the jokes land on their own without an invisible audience telling viewers when to laugh. But sometimes, in certain episodes, you hear it. Studio audience laughter, applause, reactions from people who shouldn't be there. And the characters hear it too. They react to it. They acknowledge its presence, because those laughs aren't production artifacts. They aren't sound effects added in post. Within the logic of the show's universe, they're real. They're the actual voices of beings watching from outside the Griffin family's reality. And those beings are us. The evidence starts with one of the most blatant admissions in the show's history. In one episode, Peter Griffin literally installs a live studio audience on Spooner Street, puts bleachers full of people right there on the road, and then something happens that changes everything about how you interpret the show. Peter starts telling a joke to Brian, but he has to stop. He has to wait. Because the audience won't stop laughing. He physically cannot continue his sentence until they finish making noise. Think about that for a second. Peter acknowledges their presence. He hears them. He waits for them. These aren't invisible observers. These are entities that exist within his reality. Beings whose laughter creates actual sound waves in his world that interrupt his ability to speak. The show has also mocked other programs for using laugh tracks. There's a recurring gag about a live studio ostrich that appears on terrible sitcoms, laughing on cue. Family Guy treated laugh tracks as fake, artificial, pathetic. So why does their own universe occasionally contain the same phenomenon they ridicule? Unless what the Griffins experience isn't a laugh track at all, unless it's something else entirely, not a production choice, but a metaphysical reality, the sound of higher dimensional beings watching their universe and reacting to what they see. The meta-awareness is canon. The show has confirmed it multiple times, but the most comprehensive confirmation comes from the season 15 episode Inside Family Guy, episode 4 of that season. James Woods hosts a behind-the-scenes look at the show, and what we learn shatters the fourth wall completely. Family Guy is a show within their universe. The Griffins are actors playing themselves. They have contracts. They have a studio. They're aware they're on television. Lois wears a wig. Her orange hair isn't real. Peter is described as a diva who gets fired every Monday for bad behaviour and comes crawling back by Friday. The writers create fake scripts where Peter dies just to manipulate him into cooperating. David Spade replaces him as a character called Uncle Ricky. When Peter quits, the entire family knows they're performing for someone. But who? Who's the audience for this show, within a show that exists inside the Family Guy universe? The answer is us. Higher dimensional beings, entities from outside their reality, watchers from a plane of existence that the Griffins can sense but can't fully comprehend. We're not just viewers of a television program called Family Guy. Within the logic of this theory, we are cosmic entities observing the Griffin universe directly. And when we laugh at their suffering, when we react to their pain and humiliation, they hear it, like distant thunder, like voices from the sky, like a laugh track that comes from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. Peter breaks the fourth wall constantly. He looks directly at the camera and talks to us. He winks at the screen. He makes jokes about Emmy Awards and ratings. He tells the audience to stop watching because he's about to have sex with Lois. He knows we're there. He acknowledges our presence. He speaks to entities watching from outside his universe. And he's not the only one. Stewie sings the line, "Fox will never let us die," and then looks at the camera and says, "Please." He's not talking to Peter. He's not talking to Brian. He's talking to entities that control whether his universe continues to exist. Gods from another dimension who hold his reality in their hands and make decisions about cancellation and renewal. Quagmire openly states that when discussing restaurants, they make up fake names instead of using real brands because they're on television. He says this directly. He acknowledges being watched. He knows there are legal entities from another plane of existence, copyright holders from outside his world that can punish them for using real names. The characters know. They've always known. Road to the Multiverse from Season 8 establishes that infinite parallel universes exist alongside the main Family Guy reality. Stewie builds a remote control that allows him and Brian to jump between dimensions. They visit universes where everything is Disney-style animation, where humans are ruled by dogs, where everyone looks like Flintstones characters. And critically, they visit what the show calls the real universe. A live-action universe where Brian and Stewie appear as actual flesh and blood beings, not cartoons. They exist in our world for a few seconds. They breach the dimensional barrier. They cross from their animated reality into the higher plane where we exist. If they can peek into our reality, we can observe theirs. And when millions of higher dimensional beings watch their universe simultaneously, they experience it as the laugh track, as audience reactions, as the voices of watchers commenting on their pain. In Back to the Pilot, Brian and Stewie time travel to the very first Family Guy episode, and they discover something deeply unsettling. During cutaway gags, the Griffin family just stands there, frozen, motionless, waiting in the kitchen while the cutaway plays out in some other dimension. In the early episodes, they stood rigid and uncomfortable during these pauses. In more recent episodes, they've learned to relax during the interruptions. Peter checks his phone. They just hang out, waiting for the cutaway to end so they can resume their scripted lives. They're aware of the cutaways. They know when their reality pauses so that higher dimensional beings can watch a tangential joke. They experience time differently than we do. Their suffering is interrupted by cosmic intermissions they can't control, and they've learned to accept it. At the end of episodes, Peter often looks at the camera and gives a thumbs up. Who's he giving it to? Us, the watchers. The higher dimensional entities who just observed his suffering for 22 minutes. He acknowledges our presence. He knows we watched. He's saying goodbye to beings he can barely perceive, but knows are there. And the laugh track appears most often during moments of pain, during humiliation, during suffering. When Peter gets hurt, we hear laughter. When Meg gets insulted, we hear laughter. When terrible things happen to the Griffin family, the sounds of amusement echo through their world, and the family hears it. Peter falls down a flight of stairs. Somewhere, beings from outside his reality find it hilarious. He knows this. He continues his day knowing that entities from another dimension derive entertainment from his injuries. Meg gets bullied at school, rejected by her family, told she's worthless, and she hears laughter from nowhere. From beings she'll never meet, watching from a place she'll never reach. This is their existence. They live in a universe where higher dimensional beings observe them constantly, laugh constantly, and never intervene. They're trapped in a cosmic performance, suffering for the entertainment of entities that find their disasters amusing. They hear the laughter echo across dimensional barriers every time something terrible happens, and they can't make it stop, because we control whether their universe continues existing. We're the gods they can't escape, the audience they can't ignore. The higher beings whose amusement determines whether their world gets renewed for another season or cancelled into oblivion. The laugh track isn't editing. It isn't a production choice. It's the sound of reality being observed by something outside of itself. And Peter hears it. He always has. He always will. If you're still awake, there's something we need to talk about that might be the single most biologically impossible thing that's ever happened on this show. And for a show where a baby builds time machines and a dog writes novels, that's saying something. Because Peter Griffin once used a genie wish to remove every bone from his body, and he survived. This happened in the Family Guy Viewer Mail segment. Peter encounters a genie. He makes a wish to have no bones, and instantly, every single bone in his body disappears. His skeleton, the entire structural framework that holds a human body together, is gone. He becomes a conscious, speaking blob of flesh, a human-shaped water balloon filled with organs and muscle tissue, held together by nothing except skin. And he doesn't die. He doesn't even seem particularly bothered by it, beyond the obvious inconvenience of not being able to stand up. Consider what the skeleton actually does for the human body. Your ribcage protects your lungs and heart from being crushed by gravity itself. Your skull keeps your brain from being damaged by every minor impact. Your spine houses the spinal cord, which is the main highway for every signal your brain sends to your body. Your bones produce blood cells in the marrow. They store minerals your body needs to function. They provide anchor points for muscles to pull against so you can move. Remove all of that, and you don't become a boneless blob that can still think and talk. You become something that a forensic investigator would need therapy after discovering. But Peter's brain keeps functioning despite having zero protection. His lungs keep breathing, even though they should collapse immediately without the rib cage to maintain the necessary pressure differential. His heart keeps pumping despite being crushed under the weight of all his other organs, which are now piled on top of each other inside a skin bag with no structural support whatsoever. The show even gets specific about the consequences. Boneless Peter needs 12 baths per day because his body accumulates dirt at an accelerated rate. This is a weirdly specific detail for a comedy segment. It suggests that without bones, Peter's skin properties change. He has increased surface area contact with the ground, since he's basically lying flat on everything at all times. His body might become more porous without skeletal support, absorbing environmental contaminants like a biological sponge. Either way, it confirms that Peter's body composition actively changes based on whether or not he has bones, which means his biological systems can adapt on the fly to radically different structural configurations. Peter eventually travels to Los Angeles by going down a bathtub drain. A full-sized adult man, boneless, squishing through residential plumbing, surviving the pressure, the sewage exposure, and the physical trauma of being pushed through narrow pipes designed to carry wastewater. Normal human tissue would be shredded by this. Peter arrives in Hollywood, apparently fine, minus the whole no-bones situation. In Los Angeles, he finds work as a stunt cushion for movie sets. Someone falls on him instead of a crash pad, and it works. This means boneless Peter's body provides consistent, reliable impact absorption. His skin and internal organs are resilient enough to handle the force of a human being falling onto him from height without rupturing. Normal people without bones would pop like a water balloon if someone landed on them. Peter functions as high-grade, shock-absorbing material. Throughout the entire boneless period, Peter retains full cognitive function. He makes complex emotional decisions. He holds conversations. He understands social dynamics. He executes a multi-step plan to spare his family the burden of caring for him by leaving through the drain. His brain somehow maintains full consciousness while operating as an unsupported organ inside a sack of flesh that's currently being squeezed through plumbing. When Peter's skeleton is eventually restored, the operation involves his family donating their own bones to reconstruct his body. This raises questions that violate several known principles of medicine and possibly physics. Bones aren't universal parts you can swap between people like Lego pieces. They're custom-shaped to each individual's body, connected to specific muscles and joints, sized precisely for that person's frame. Peter's family donating random bones from their own bodies should result in either total surgical failure or immediate immune rejection. Instead, the surgery succeeds. Everyone ends up misshapen because the bones don't fit properly in their new bodies, but Peter's immune system accepts the transplanted bones without rejection, infection, or major complications beyond cosmetic deformity. This confirms something profound about Peter's biology. His body can integrate foreign biological material without the normal rejection response that would kill a regular human. In real medicine, organ transplants require extensive compatibility testing, immunosuppressant drugs, and careful monitoring. Peter just absorbs random bones from his family members and walks out of the hospital. The fact that Peter's insurance company covered the procedure suggests either this has happened before to other people in the Family Guy universe, or Peter has the most comprehensive insurance plan in television history. Some claims adjuster looked at the paperwork that said patient removed all bones via magical wish, requires family member bone donation transplant surgery, and approved it as a legitimate medical procedure. That's either absurd bureaucratic comedy or evidence that the Family Guy universe has established medical protocols for wish-based skeletal removal. The boneless episode proves something that the rest of the show has been hinting at for years. Peter Griffin's body operates on fundamentally different biological rules than normal human anatomy. If he can survive weeks without a skeleton, what other supposedly essential body parts could he live without? His ability to survive every form of physical trauma the show throws at him. The explosions, the falls, the gunshots, the car crashes, isn't plot armor. It's established biology. Peter Griffin is canonically capable of surviving in physical states that would mean instant death for regular humans, and he does it while maintaining his personality, his memories, and his ability to make terrible decisions. Every time Peter survives something fatal in later episodes, you should remember this is a person who once didn't have bones for several weeks and was basically fine. His body is more suggestion than requirement, a loose collection of parts that can function in almost any configuration as long as there's enough mass present to maintain consciousness. That's not human biology. That's something else entirely, something wearing a human costume made of skin and occasionally bones, and doing a convincing enough job that nobody in Quahog asks questions. But maybe nobody in Quahog asks questions about anything, because the final mystery we need to discuss is the one that explains why the entire population of this town accepts the impossible as normal. Why catastrophic events get forgotten by the next episode. Why 87 people can kill themselves over a fake news broadcast and nobody investigates. The answer is Channel 5 News. And the answer is terrifying. Tom Tucker and Diane Simmons once broadcast a fake news report claiming the world would end in 24 hours. They told the citizens of Quahog that a black hole had been discovered, that it had been confirmed by NASA, and that the entire planet would be destroyed by the next day. This happened in the episode April in Quahog. It was an April Fool's Day prank, and the entire town believed it without question. Not some of the town. The entire town. Every single resident of Quahog heard the broadcast and immediately accepted it as absolute fact. Nobody checked CNN. Nobody browsed the internet. Nobody called NASA. Nobody wondered why only their local Rhode Island news station had this exclusive scoop about the end of the world, when a discovery of this magnitude would be global news covered by every outlet on Earth. The black hole was supposedly confirmed by NASA and discovered by Stephen Hawking, which means every major news organization on the planet would have been running this story simultaneously. But Quahog residents accepted that their local Channel 5 news had the exclusive, and they didn't find that remotely suspicious. And then they acted on it, immediately. Herbert abandoned any remaining restraint on his worst impulses. Quagmire slept with his friend's wife, Bonnie. Peter stole a lion from the zoo using a shotgun. The entire social structure of Quahog collapsed within hours. Not gradually, not with hesitation, instantly. Like someone flipped a switch from normal citizen to complete chaos the moment the newscast gave them permission. Their moral frameworks dissolved. Their survival instincts shut down. Their attachments to the people they love evaporated. All because Tom Tucker told them the world was ending, and their brains could not conceive of the possibility that Tom Tucker might be wrong. 87 people killed themselves. 87 residents of Quahog heard they had 24 hours to live and decided to end things themselves rather than wait for the black hole. Suicide isn't typically an impulsive reaction for most people. It usually results from prolonged suffering and hopelessness. But 87 Quahog citizens heard one broadcast from one local news station, and their brains accepted death as inevitable fact so completely that they executed themselves within hours. That's not despair, that's programming. Their minds received a command from Channel 5 and could not resist carrying it out. And when the prank was revealed, Tom Tucker and Diane Simmons appeared on camera to brag about their success. They described the mass suicides and widespread looting as acceptable collateral for a good April Fool's joke. Normal human beings would be horrified. They would be facing criminal charges for inciting panic. They would be answering for the deaths of 87 people. But Tom and Diane treated it like they'd pulled off a successful office prank, not triggered a mass casualty event. And the reason they weren't afraid is because they understand something about their audience that we're only now piecing together. They know Quahog residents can't resist Channel 5 broadcasts. They tested their control over the population and confirmed it works perfectly. The fact that Channel 5 faced no consequences for causing 87 deaths tells you how deep the control runs. Mayor Adam West didn't shut down the station. Joe Swanson didn't arrest the anchors. Nobody sued for wrongful death. The town's institutional systems, law enforcement, local government, even federal agencies, if they'd gotten involved, all failed to respond appropriately to what should be one of the most serious criminal incidents in the town's history. Brian called them dicks. That was the strongest response anyone managed. Even Brian, who prides himself on being smarter and more aware than everyone around him, couldn't muster more than a weak insult, which suggests even Brian is partially affected by whatever field Channel 5 projects. He can recognise something wrong happened, but he can't maintain the awareness necessary to organise resistance or demand accountability. Think about how Channel 5 appears in nearly every episode. Tom Tucker and the news team are recurring presences who pop up constantly to deliver information, provide commentary, or just exist in the background of Quahog life. The news isn't just a source of information in this town, it's embedded in the daily texture of living there. Characters regularly reference news broadcasts, react to what Tom Tucker says, and structure their understanding of events around how Channel 5 reports them. The news doesn't reflect reality in Quahog, it creates reality. Whatever Tom Tucker says on the air becomes the accepted truth, regardless of what actually happened. And the town's collective memory reshapes itself to match whatever Channel 5's official narrative is. This explains one of the most enduring questions about Family Guy. Why does the town experience catastrophic events that get completely forgotten by the next episode? Quahog gets destroyed, gets invaded, gets fundamentally altered, and then everything resets. No lingering consequences, no collective trauma, no characters referencing the fact that their entire town nearly ceased to exist a week ago. These aren't continuity errors. They aren't cartoon logic. They're memory wipes. Channel 5 broadcasts a new version of reality after every catastrophe, and the town's collective consciousness accepts it as truth, overwriting all memory of what actually happened. The town isn't recovering from disasters. It's being told to forget disasters happened, and the residents' minds comply. The April Fool's broadcast proved Channel 5 can create reality through suggestion. They told Quahog the world was ending, and for every citizen of Quahog, the world was ending. Laws stopped mattering, social bonds dissolved, survival instincts shut down entirely. The town existed in an apocalyptic state for a full day because Channel 5 said it should, and reality only returned to normal when Channel 5 gave permission for it to return to normal. If they can make an entire town believe in and behave according to an imminent apocalypse with a single broadcast, they can make the town believe anything. Forget anything, accept anything. Tom Tucker's position as head anchor isn't just a job. It might be the most powerful position in Quahog, more powerful than the mayor, who is famously erratic and ineffective. More powerful than the police, who follow whatever narrative Channel 5 establishes about what crimes matter and who deserves punishment. Tom Tucker doesn't just report on Quahog, he defines what Quahog is at any given moment. His broadcasts aren't information, they're instructions, and every television in town receives those instructions and processes them, whether the viewer consciously realizes it or not. Diane Simmons's murder spree in And Then There Were Fewer takes on new significance through this lens. Diane didn't just snap because of a broken heart. She was someone who understood the power Channel 5 held over the town and used it to orchestrate an elaborate manipulation scheme. She arranged for James Woods to host a dinner party, executed a complex series of murders, and successfully framed Tom Tucker for the killings. She knew how to manipulate reality in Quahog because she had been helping create that reality every night from the news desk. Her murder plot wasn't impressive despite her being a news anchor. It was possible because she was a news anchor who understood exactly how the collective consciousness of Quahog could be shaped and directed. The competition from other news outlets is non-existent. Quahog residents theoretically have access to cable news, internet sources, and national broadcasts, but they never use them. They never compare Channel 5's reporting to outside information. It's as if Channel 5 has created an information bubble around the town where external news sources exist but can't penetrate the residents' consciousness. This isolation is essential for maintaining control. If citizens regularly compared Channel 5's version of events to what CNN or any national outlet reported, they might notice discrepancies. They might start questioning. The bubble prevents that. It keeps the population entirely dependent on a single source of reality, which means that single source faces no competition and no accountability. Peter's relationship with Tom Tucker makes this even more troubling. Peter has developed a friendship with Tom. He even saw him as a father figure for a period, someone who is especially susceptible to Channel 5's broadcasts. Forming a personal bond with the primary broadcaster suggests the control mechanism works more effectively on people who have emotional connections to the anchors. When Tom Tucker tells Peter something, Peter doesn't just believe it, he incorporates it into his identity. This might explain why Peter is so chaotic and unpredictable. He's receiving Channel 5's reality-shaping broadcasts, but processing them through a brain that doesn't function normally, creating bizarre outcomes that ripple through the town until the next broadcast resets everything. The show's frequent cutaway gags might actually be glimpses of previous realities that Channel 5 has overwritten. Peter remembers things that never happened in the current timeline because those events occurred in previous versions of Quahog before Channel 5 broadcast a new reality. The cutaways aren't random tangents, they're Peter's damaged brain glitching between timeline versions, unable to fully commit to the current approved reality because something in his neural chemistry makes him partially resistant to complete memory wipes. He retains fragments of old realities and experiences them as random thoughts, not realizing he's actually remembering things that Channel 5 has told everyone else to forget. The April Fool's broadcast was a test, a deliberate experiment to confirm the absolute extent of Channel 5's control. They chose the most extreme possible scenario, imminent planetary destruction, and measured how completely the town would accept it. 87 suicides and citywide chaos proved the system works beyond any reasonable expectation. Quahog residents aren't just influenced by Channel 5, they're owned by it. Their thoughts, memories, behaviours and survival instincts can be overridden by a single broadcast from Tom Tucker's desk. Having confirmed this, Channel 5 now knows they can broadcast literally anything, and the town will accept it as truth. The real horror is that even after the prank was revealed, after Tom and Diane openly bragged about manipulating the entire town into chaos and causing nearly 100 deaths, nobody stayed angry. Nobody organised investigations. Nobody demanded change. The control is so complete that even when Channel 5 openly demonstrates its power, the residents can't maintain awareness of what that means. They forget to be concerned because Channel 5 tells them not to be concerned, and their brains comply. Every episode, reset. Every forgotten catastrophe. Every inexplicable mass behaviour change. Every time Quahog rebuilds from destruction, without anyone questioning how or why. It's all Channel 5, managing the town like a show, resetting the narrative whenever it gets too heavy, overwriting memories when continuity threatens to become permanent. Tom Tucker isn't a character in the Family Guy universe. He's the voice of the universe itself, telling the other characters what's real and what isn't, adjusting their memories and behaviours as needed, keeping reality flexible enough for comedy to work, and preventing anyone from noticing that their world operates on cartoon logic instead of consistent physical laws. The citizens of Quahog will never escape Channel 5's influence. They can't. Their brains were built to receive the signal. Their reality was constructed by the broadcasts. Their entire existence depends on Tom Tucker continuing to tell them what's real. And they'll never know the difference because the knowledge that they should know is something Channel 5 has chosen not to broadcast. What you don't know can't hurt you. And what Channel 5 doesn't report never happened. Now step back for a moment and look at what we've uncovered tonight. Because when you line all of these mysteries up next to each other, something emerges that none of them reveal individually. A pattern, a system, a unified architecture of control that explains everything strange about Quahog, Rhode Island. At the top sits Carter Pewterschmidt, a man whose family has controlled American infrastructure since before the country existed. A man who owns the town's economy, corrupts its law enforcement, manufactures its political movements, and pays for the house his daughter's family lives in. Carter is the architect, the money, the one who ensures the system runs and that consequences never reach anyone under his protection. He commissioned Dr. Hartman to monitor the griffins. He suppressed the cancer cure his own company developed. He shut down Quahog's government for profit and rebuilt it on his own terms. Carter is the reason Peter can bomb buildings and walk away free. He's the reason the courts don't work. He's the reason nobody investigates anything. Below Carter is Dr. Hartman, the physician who isn't really a physician, the man who can clone organisms and engineer genetic material, whose incompetence is too consistent to be genuine, whose relationship with Carter goes deeper than any doctor-patient privilege should allow. Hartman monitors the griffins. He monitors Meg, the possible genetic experiment. He monitors Peter's mutated biology. He takes the data, he files his reports, and he tells everyone they're fine because treating them would compromise the experiment. Below Hartman is Channel 5, the broadcast system that maintains the entire population in a state of perpetual suggestibility. Tom Tucker doesn't just read the news. He defines reality for every citizen of Quahog. He controls what they remember and what they forget. He overwrites catastrophic events with new narratives. He He keeps the town functioning despite the fact that it should have collapsed into permanent chaos decades ago. Channel 5 is the reason nobody questions why the houses rebuild themselves, why Peter never goes to prison, why Meg's birth story changes every time someone tells it. Because every time someone might start questioning, the next broadcast smooths the anomaly away, and beneath all of it, beneath the money and the monitoring and the mind control, sits the containment infrastructure itself. The houses on Spooner Street that aren't really houses. The pocket dimensions disguised as suburban homes that keep the anomalies contained while letting them believe they're living normal lives. The burial ground beneath the Griffin House that makes the dimensional boundaries thin enough for the portal to function. The maps that can't represent 31 Spooner Street because the house exists slightly outside of mappable space. The government agents embedded on the street, watching, recording, making sure nothing breaches the perimeter. Carter provides the funding. Hartman provides the science. Channel 5 provides the population control. The houses provide the containment, and the residents of Spooner Street, Peter and Lois and Brian and Stewie and Meg and Chris and Joe and Cleveland and Quagmire and Herbert, all of them live inside this architecture without ever seeing it. Because the system was designed to be invisible. It was designed so that the subjects would believe they're living in a normal town, going about normal lives, experiencing normal problems. But nothing about Quahog is normal. A dog is burning through a finite number of lives, and nobody notices because the time machine keeps loading the next copy. A woman hasn't aged in 30 years, and nobody notices because they can't remember what she looked like 30 years ago. A pilot switches between two personalities dozens of times per day, and nobody notices because they've been conditioned to accept his behaviour as just Quagmire being Quagmire. A mayor saw through the walls of reality itself, and nobody noticed because his observations were filed under comedy instead of evidence. Every mystery we've discussed tonight is connected to the same system. The Pewter-Schmidt dynasty provides the resources. The genetic mutations provide the subjects. The containment houses provide the infrastructure. Channel 5 provides the memory management. Death provides the mortality franchise that keeps the subjects alive long enough to be useful. And the laugh track, the voices from outside, provides the final piece. The audience, the observers, the higher dimensional beings whose attention keeps the entire construct running. Because that's what a television show is. An architecture of control. A system where characters exist in carefully managed environments, where their memories reset between episodes, where catastrophic damage gets repaired by the next installment, where death is temporary and consequences are optional, where an audience watches from outside and the characters can sense them but never fully understand what they are. Quahog isn't a town that happens to be the setting of a cartoon. Quahog is a cartoon that happens to look like a town. And the residents aren't characters who occasionally break the fourth wall. Their consciousness trapped inside a narrative framework, perceiving the boundaries of their confinement in fragments, unable to assemble the full picture because the system was specifically designed to prevent them from ever putting all the pieces together. Peter sees the audience but thinks they're just funny sounds from the sky. Stewie sees the time loops but thinks they're just physics. Brian feels the deaths he can't remember but thinks they're just existential dread. Lois sees her face never aging but thinks it's just good genes. Adam West saw everything, saw the whole construct from the inside, and they put him in a mayoral office and let everyone think he was insane. The system works. It has worked for 25 years and over 400 episodes. The subjects remain contained. The audience remains entertained. The architecture holds. But every system has cracks. And the cracks in this one are the theories we've been discussing all night. The moments where the show accidentally reveals too much. Where a line of dialogue or a background detail or a seemingly throwaway joke exposes a piece of the machinery that's supposed to stay hidden. And once you've seen those cracks, you can't unsee them. You can't go back to watching Family Guy as just a cartoon. Because you know what Quahog really is. You know what the laugh track really means. You know why the houses reset and why the residents don't age and why Peter never goes to jail and why Meg was made to be invisible. You know. And now the only question is whether knowing changes anything, or whether, like every other piece of inconvenient truth in Quahog, this knowledge will be overwritten by the next broadcast, smoothed away, forgotten, filed under comedy instead of evidence. Tom Tucker goes on the air at 6 and 11. The signal reaches every television in town, and by morning, none of this will matter, because Channel 5 will tell Quahog what to remember, and Quahog will listen. It always listens, and that's Quahog, a town built on toxic waste and old money, where the houses rebuild themselves and the residents can't be killed, where a 61-year-old man eats carrots to stay young and a dog is slowly running out of lives, where the mayor saw through the walls of his own reality and the government put him there to keep him contained, where death is just a guy doing a job and the news station tells you what to remember and what to forget, where a mother stays 43 forever and pays for it with pieces of her soul, where the laugh track is real and the audience is watching from another dimension, where a man can live without bones and a baby can build a time machine and nobody questions any of it because the television told them not to. If you're still awake, thank you for staying. Seriously. 2 hours is a long time to spend inside the mythology of a cartoon, and if you made it this far with your eyes open, you're either fascinated or you have the kind of insomnia that no amount of Family Guy lore can cure. Either way, I appreciate it. And if you drifted off somewhere along the way, if you fell asleep during Brian's 9 lives or Lois's missing years or Peter's boneless adventure through the Los Angeles sewer system, that's exactly what this was for. That's the whole point. These mysteries don't need solving tonight. They need sitting with. They need turning over in the quiet part of your brain that works best when the rest of you is half asleep. The part that makes connections you'd never make while fully conscious. The part that wonders, just for a second, whether the laugh track on your favourite show was ever really intended for you. Because the best theories aren't the ones you figure out. They're the ones that figure you out while you're not paying attention. They're the ones that settle into your subconscious and rearrange things while you sleep, so that when you wake up tomorrow morning and see a clip of Family Guy on your phone, something will feel different. Peter will say something stupid and you'll laugh, but underneath the laugh there'll be a question. A small one you can't quite articulate. Something about water and houses, and a woman who never gets older, and a dog who's died more times than anyone can count. That question is the real mystery. Not the answers we discussed tonight. The question itself. The feeling that maybe, just maybe, there's more going on beneath the surface of the things we watch every day than we're comfortable admitting. And if that feeling follows you into your dreams tonight, good, let it. That's where the best thinking happens anyway. Sleep well. Quahog will still be here when you wake up. The houses will still remember what they're supposed to look like. The residents will still survive things they shouldn't survive. Tom Tucker will still be on the air at 6 and 11. Death will still be filing paperwork with his supervisor. Carter will still be pulling strings from his Newport mansion. And somewhere, in whatever dimension we're watching from, the laugh track will keep playing. Because the show never really ends. It just waits for the next person to tune in.